Hello.
Hello.
This is exciting.
Yes.
Thank you. So Humans of Wellbeing.
Yeah, what an exciting thing to be part of.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So we're collecting stories around what it's like to be a human of wellbeing.
Yeah.
So from individuals that had a trigger or something happened that kind of made them think, I really need to think about my health and happiness.
Yeah.
And we're also getting the other side of it for people that are professionally in the wellbeing industry helping others. So we're getting a really inside out, outside in look on it all. So I'd be really keen to kind of get your take on what the trigger was for you.
Yeah. When I talk about it, I was hesitating there because I actually think it wasn't one moment.
Okay.
So I think it was actually an experience that built over a number of years and perhaps even decades.
Wow.
And so when people say, you know, what was that moment? There was a moment. There was a moment when I couldn't get out of bed one day, and I was there for 5 days. So there was a defining moment, but really, when I look back at the situation, it had taken a number of years to reach that moment, and actually it had begun decades ago. So, you know, I'd started at 14 with 2 jobs. I began working, and this addiction to work continued through my 20s. That was my focus, that was my obsession, that was kind of my everything, really. And then by the time I had the collapse in my 30s, you know, the amount of work that I was doing had increased excessively. So I talk about working from 6 till 3, but that was 6 a.m. till 3 a.m.
Wow.
So, you know, that was kind of the extent that I had pushed my limits. And actually what I had to learn from that experience was I had some limits, and I don't think I'd ever really wanted to accept or appreciate that.
Wow.
So that's where it began.
That we're not limitless.
Not limitless.
There is a limit.
Yeah. And also that I came, I think, from a family of women who really worked hard. You know, when I look back at the generations of women in my family, you know, my grandmother worked really hard. My great-grandmother had 13 children.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine the toll that took on her body, as well as what that was like to actually, you know,
that was her role.
Yeah, sustain that financially, emotionally, physically. You know, how do you create that kind of life? So, there was a lot of heritage, I think, that I just picked up the mantle and carried on with in a kind of modern way.
Yeah.
You know, and that modern way was travelling around the world. It was working digitally. You know, having virtual teams and.
Yeah.
And to some degree, trying to save the world a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So when you had that moment,
Yeah.
acknowledging that there were lots of like indicators as you went through,
Yeah.
what was it that kind of made you just sort of take stock and go, do you know what, I need to kind of take a check of this?
And what's interesting, I think, is at that point that I mentioned where I couldn't get out of bed, I didn't take a check.
Okay.
So at that point, I just thought, okay, why can't my body move?
Yeah.
Like, this is weird. Give me my laptop, let me carry on. So that's what I did for 5 days. And then on the Friday night, I went out with a friend who'd come to Singapore from Dubai and went partying. So at that point, I hadn't really got the message at all that there was some trouble. And I think it took another couple of weeks really after that. And I tell the story of, you know, realising when I was sitting in bed that, you know, maybe I needed a holiday, and trying to think about where would I go on holiday. I was living in Singapore, where would I go? And realising that I couldn't, for somebody who had been travelling a vast amount, I couldn't really face the thought of travelling.
Wow.
That was a little like, oh, that's interesting. That was just a little tiny thought seed in my mind where I thought, well, that's strange. Why can't I just do what I normally do? And
jump on a plane.
Exactly. Jet to Canada or jet to Australia or head to Tenerife. I was looking at all of these different, you know, amazing wellbeing places, and I didn't have the energy to do it, and that was a signal then. I was like, okay, something's strange here.
Wow. And
I managed to get back to England, and then really I took a holiday, and it was in that week off that I realised actually I'm not functioning, and that the basic things that I could normally do, I couldn't do. So my ability I could drive just about, but I was really careless. It was easy for me to have accidents. I couldn't read the map. I couldn't navigate my way around. I'm like, what's going on? Like my brain was starting to just be in such a fog that I drove for about 2.5 hours around Bristol one day trying to drop a car off, and I just couldn't figure out how to get out of the town and to where I needed to go. So it just wasn't, like, I'm a fairly competent person, right? And I just lost some of those basic abilities.
So you're like, your internal sat nav was just
and my
override.
Like my mind couldn't compute anymore. And I spent a lot of time crying. I remember that, just crying. And I saw the doctor and he said, well, you're depressed. I'm saying I'm not depressed. I know I'm not depressed. I'm upset, but I'm not depressed. And there was quite a distinction for me. And I saw 3 different people and they all told me I was depressed and I should have antidepressants, which, I'm not against that for people who that's right for, but I just knew inside I wasn't depressed.
That wasn't for you.
That I wasn't depressed.
Yeah.
That was the really key thing.
Yeah.
There was things that weren't right, but it wasn't depression.
Yeah.
I was really strong on that.
So that real connection with actually you and your own health, and not necessarily relying on someone else's view on what your health was.
Yeah, needing to navigate that and seeing how easy it was for the doctor to say you're depressed, so here's the answer, here's some antidepressants. And I fought that, and I remember arguing with each of them and saying that's not what's wrong with me, and none of them wanting to go any deeper into the conversation about what might be going on. So I had to find other routes to start my own journey of self-diagnosis, like what was really going on. And that was massively helpful to explore things for myself. A slower process, right? Because you can walk into a GP and get an instant answer and try what they suggest, and there might not be anything wrong with that. But if you're not really treating what you need to treat, then that's not going to help. So it was a week off that turned into 3 months.
Wow.
Total retreat. And learning what I call my fundamentals. I have a friend called Tom, and he talks about focus on your fundamentals, and that's really what I was doing during that 3 months. The fundamentals of sleep, eat, considering how I was going to live, how I was going to work, who I was going to spend time with, like all the just foundations.
Wow. So I think that's really powerful, because particularly with this whole movement we're creating here with Humans of Wellbeing, it also translates into how, and I think there's a lot of what and why out there around wellbeing, which is really helpful for people to kind of have that level of awareness. But there's this element of how do I do it? So what would be like the 1 or 2 things that you would advise, or guidance that you would give to others around how they navigate their own how, because it's going to be different for each of us?
Yes. It's a big question, actually, and I think one of the reasons that there's less of it is I think it's quite specific to the individual. So I can talk about my how, if that's useful, and then other people can think about, well, what would be useful for them. So my how was therapy. So having a really good therapist. It might be a counsellor that someone has, or a coach, somebody who's in that space where you can talk, because I think the talking therapies allow you to start to listen to what it is that you need for yourself. So for me, that allowed me to realise that the work I was doing wasn't suiting my health, allowed me to navigate through how did I leave that job, and because I was really attached to it. I didn't really want to leave it, but what it would take for me to actually create an environment that would be healthier for me. So the talking therapy is definitely really essential. For me, one of the key hows at that time was a nutritionist. And actually just getting the tests that I needed to tell me what was really going on with my body, which the doctors hadn't been, well, they'd never even suggested, actually. I remember one guy just pressed my belly, weighed me, measured me, and went, "Whoa, you're depressed." I'm like, how did you get to that? He said, "Oh, you're crying." I'm like, "Yeah, That's because I'm upset. So definitely one of the hows for me was the tests and the nutritionist, and then food. And I think food is probably a good baseline for most people, is thinking about your nutrition and how you eat, because most of us, we probably would say we've got room for improvement in that area. We have to be mindful that our food doesn't have the nutritional value that it used to have. That we're eating a lot more processed food, many of us now. We're eating on the move a lot more. And perhaps eating later in the day, so our body doesn't get the time to be able to detox as well overnight and rest and regenerate overnight. So I think food is definitely something that most people can take a look at and consider how are they eating, what's working for them, and what they might want to tweak. And honestly, a lot of the how, most of us know. That we're well educated. It's not like we're missing the information, which is why I think the talking therapies are good, because then they help you explore, well, if you know this already, either cognitively or intuitively, how do you start to make that be your way of living and have that well-being? And sleep was the other how for me, just really getting it, like actually sleeping, going to bed. I really notice it if I go to bed later than 11 o'clock. My body isn't set up for that, and certainly not designed to work till 3 a.m.
So almost coming back to that kind of stripping away and coming back to that natural state of what it is to be a well person.
It is. The body actually wants to be in balance. So it's always striving to put itself back into balance. So if we can help with some of those, focusing on those fundamentals, then it makes a massive difference. And we might say, well, those aren't really like radical things, but actually having a rhythm where you go to bed at the same time every night, and you wake up at the same time every morning, for most people these days is quite radical, because we don't have that kind of rhythm. We're much more erratic than that. So some of it is really simple, but there's power in that simplicity.
Wow, thank you so much, Danielle, for your time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for the
invitation.
And
being part of the health movement. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching.